Would you be proud to have organized the largest purposeful demolition of a building in human history? Coming up on Architecture Codex.
Architecture Codex. If you want to see more, subscribe.
People in New York City still lament the demolition of certain buildings. Penn Station, Architecture Codex video number 29, built in 1910, was demolished for the new Madison Square Garden in 1966, and that started the Landmarks Commission to preserve buildings. But that was too late for the Singer Tower, for 1 year the tallest building in the world, which was built in 1908 and was demolished in 1967 for the new U.S. Steel building, also known as One Liberty Plaza. But the most recent example of a favored skyscraper being demolished has gone essentially unnoticed. The Union Carbide Building was built in 1960 and designed by Skidmore Owings and Merrill's team of Gordon Bunshaft and Natalie de Blois, who also designed the Lever House, a bit further up Park Avenue, Architecture Codex video number 39. The Union Carbide Building was the epitome of mid-century modern skyscraper, efficient, minimalist, and perhaps a bit dull. Its transition from tower to street was logical, but not dramatic, an understated two-story lobby. Its structural grid module fit between the spacing of the below-grade train tracks that are part of the 75-acre underground train yard that is Grand Central Terminal, Architecture Codex video number 21. The Union Carbide Building occupied a full city block, was 52 stories tall, with a total of 1,500,000 square feet of floor area. Its limitations were confined by the 1916 zoning laws. Union Carbide Corporation, UCC, was a chemical company formed in 1917, and it had a deep office presence in the greater metropolitan area of New York City and production facilities worldwide. A series of industrial accidents, including the 1984 Bhopal leak, tarnished their reputation, but they still existed when they were acquired as a fully independent subsidiary of the Dow Chemical Corporation. In the 1980s, the bank Manufacturers Hanover acquired the UCC building, and Manufacturers Hanover was eventually acquired by J.P. Morgan Chase in 2000. For many years, J.P. Morgan occupied much of the building. In 2013, the New York City Landmarks Preservation Committee failed to designate the UCC as historically significant, kind of because they said that there were already buildings so designated that were designed by Bunshaft and de Blois. One wonders if bank money could influence such a decision. I cannot say. 5 years later, J.P. Morgan announced it would demolish the UCC for a new tower, and almost no one cared. Eventually, the tower, designed by Foster & Partners, was released. It would be 70 stories tall, 18 stories higher, and have 2,500,000 square feet of floor area. This extra 1 million square feet of floor space was made possible by purchasing the air rights from Bartholomew's Episcopal Church and a $40 million donation to what was called a district-wide improvement fund. I think that's better pronounced bribe. It is possible that many a politician benefited from this district-wide improvement fund, but I cannot say. What I can say is that the PR firms quickly turned this around into an attribute, proudly bragging that the demolition of the UCC would be the biggest purposeful demolition of a building in human history. Golly. If you want to imagine what it's like to dismantle a skyscraper, I recommend David Macaulay's 1980 book, Unbuilding. In the book, he theorizes what it would be like if you decided to dismantle the Empire State Building. And it has a lot of his famous kind of drawings that David is known for, and a lot of his very imaginative architecture books. Unbuilding probably caused a bit of a sensation because no one could ever picture dismantling the Empire State Building, and maybe that's more so true today. but it's an interesting brain exercise. The most intriguing aspect of the new tower, which is just finishing up on the interiors and the plaza around so it can be occupied, and so it gives me permission to comment on the building, is how the 80-foot tall base of the building's steel carries the structural grid of the tower above. The tower's framing was not deferential to the spacing of the train tracks below. So the base structure, the 24 fan columns, create a dynamic structural expression. The kind of thing that I normally like, and I guess I like it here too. It reminds me of the hinge base of a column that was a theoretical constant in my structures classes. This is a complex system to calculate the loads, as nothing is really repetitive or symmetrical, the way structural engineers prefer to work. Sometimes the column constraint was the narrowness between the train tracks, occasionally as limited as 48 inches. Sometimes the columns load on bedrock, which is good, but some of the columns load on soil, requiring massive foundations, which is okay too, but dealing with the potential difference in the settlement is a complication. The design team also used 16,000 psi concrete, a high-strength mixture 4 times as strong as most concrete in construction, which is thus about 4,000 psi. The irregular column bases mean more work had to be done by the carrying girders to transfer the column grid from the tower above to the irregular foundation pattern. The result is a building that hovers on all 4 sides above the ground plaza with a visually dynamic power, and since it occupies the north end of Vanderbilt Avenue, they nicely aligned the main entrance, sort of, with the street. Vanderbilt Avenue is the ground-level west road that scoots Park Avenue around Grand Central Terminal. It has been partially turned into a pedestrian mall, embracing entrances to One Vanderbilt and the Pan Am, now MetLife buildings. I would hope someday it would be completely dedicated to pedestrians. A base structure that is similar was done recently in Chicago at the 150 North Riverside Tower, where the office space stands on tiptoes to allow more public ground access to the Chicago River. The J.P. Morgan Tower itself appears to be a series of adjacent slabs with central ones ascending higher, sort of like the bundled tubes of Chicago's Sears, now Willis Tower. The express diagonal steel bracing is similar to what we saw at the John Hancock Building, also in Chicago. And while New Yorkers may appear to be proud of the new J.P. Morgan Tower, Chicagoans can say, "Been there, done that." Or they may simply say, "Da bears." The developers have issued the usual rationalization about how the new skyscrapers are environmentally friendly. I find such public revelations kind of silly. This kind of building is driven by real estate values, and the words environmentally sensitive do not appear in the essential maxim of real estate: location, location, location. This site is next to Grand Central Terminal, which is why it justifies the construction of a skyscraper. But let's be frank, if the economic viability of the site meant the architects had to design a radioactive chemical plant that regularly threw molten shrapnel at the passersby, they would have done that. So don't get morally smug with me about your environmentally designed skyscraper. Architect Norman Foster reports, quote, "In 1811, when the site was countryside, the city commissioners created a master plan for New York. It was bold, innovative, and reflected an optimism for the future. Today, over 200 years later, the same things are true of 270 Park Avenue. The building is a great investment in the city, the bank, and the well-being of the 14,000 people who will occupy it. It does more with less, more public space, fresh air, light and views, and less carbon through electric, green energy." End quote. The building is reported to have 100% hydroelectric power, but of course none of that production is in Manhattan, unless they manage to put little tiny electric turbines on all the toilet drains. And I don't know if J.P. Morgan Chase purchased a waterfall in upstate New York, but it is much more likely that they are paying a premium electric rate simply because the utility has designated their electricity to be sustainable. So this is really an accounting trick and not increased sustainability infrastructure. The building team also brags that 97% of the old Union Carbide building has been recycled, but steel and concrete have always had a salvage value. So I really don't know if this represents some sort of sustainable virtue. Both the Union Carbide building and the new JP Morgan building are very, very good, but neither was nor is architecturally, historically exceptional. The core question for me then, was it worth demolishing the Union Carbide building in order to build the new JP Morgan building? I cannot say. And I know in media and politics today, where we are supposed to identify the villain so we can all hate the villain, I am not doing that. I don't see any villains here. What happened was logical, given the parameters and how things work today. I know not taking a stance like that means this video may not get a lot of hits, but if I'm doing this on principle, you can see why my YouTube channel has such dismally poor YouTube stats. Still, I don't feel the need to pick one over the other. I can say that I like both buildings. And if you've seen any of my other videos on this channel, you know I am not shy about expressing an opinion. I'm Michael Molinelli, and this is Architecture Codex.